7 days before the wedding, I stood outside the banquet hall, watching my fiancée Margarita exchange vows with her first love, Simon, heir to a multinational corporation, looked at me with a frail, almost theatrical expression. "Sorry," he said. "The doctor says I have less than 3 months to live. Could you please let me fulfill this small wish in my final days?" My future father-in-law, who had always treated me like his own son, spoke coldly this time. "You've seen Simon's condition. Just think of it as helping a dying man realize his last dream. Can't you be a little more understanding?" Margarita gently held my hand. "Simon and I grew up together. He's dying. Duncan, I can't just stand by and do nothing." I smiled and nodded. So in her heart, Simon was the one who could never be replaced. Margarita thought I had accepted this ridiculous request, and even promised that after Simon passed, she would give me a grander wedding. But she seemed to forget something. She had already exchanged rings with Simon 3 days ago, and now, I had no intention of going through with this farce of a marriage. Chapter 1. Today was supposed to be my wedding day, yet I sat in the audience like a stranger. The custom suit still smelled faintly of the tailor's shop, and the groom's boutonniere on my chest felt out of place. I sat quietly in the Shangri-La Hotel's grand ballroom as Margarita walked down the aisle, arm in arm with Simon. To the sound of the wedding march, the officiant declared solemnly, "Let the bride and groom exchange rings." The hall erupted in cheers and applause. Champagne bubbles danced merrily in crystal glasses. Someone in the crowd joked, "The groom's taking the bride straight to the honeymoon suite tonight." Margarita gave that person a playful glare, but the smile tugging at the corners of her mouth betrayed her delight. Simon cupped her face tenderly and said, "Margarita, we finally belong to each other." Her eyes lowered, cheeks flushing pink. The two of them were lost in each other's gaze, as if the world around them had vanished. My father-in-law raised his champagne flute and beamed. "From today on, Simon is one of us. Take good care of my Margarita, all right?" The guests were buzzing with joy, glasses clinking in celebration, and I was the unwelcome extra in this festival of bliss. I chuckled bitterly to myself and stood up, ready to walk out of this joke of a ceremony. "Duncan." Margarita's voice rang out from behind me. She rushed to catch up. "Where are you going?" I turned back with a wry smile. Sometimes it's best to step back when it's time to step back, isn't it? Her face stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" She dragged me into a corner of the hall, voice lowered. "I already told you, this is just a performance for Simon. Why don't you understand?" Watching her explain so seriously, I found it absurd. A week ago, we were heading to the marriage registry when she got a call from Simon. He said he had a terminal illness and only 3 months left to live. His final wish was to marry her. I objected on the spot, but Margarita was resolute. "Simon and I have known each other since we were kids. He's helped me a lot. I can't just abandon him now." Then, without hesitation, she went and registered her marriage with Simon. She seemed to forget, the groom who should have been standing at the altar was me. I rubbed my temples, exhausted. I'm not overthinking. I just needed some air. That's when Simon walked over, looking pale and fragile. "I'm sorry, Duncan," he said. "I was selfish. I ruined your wedding. Maybe I shouldn't even be alive." Tears began falling from his eyes. This poor little act, he'd rehearsed it 100 times, and Margarita always fell for it. Sure enough, she rushed to hug Simon, then turned and glared at me. "Duncan, he just didn't want to leave this world with regrets. Why can't you understand that? How can you be so heartless?" I'd seen this scene play out too many times. Ever since Simon fell ill, everything he did was justified, and I was always the insensitive villain. I didn't argue anymore. I simply nodded. "You're right. I'm the one being unreasonable." Chapter 2. At that moment, Simon suddenly walked up to me, as if he wanted to whisper something. He leaned in very close, but suddenly his ankle twisted and he collapsed. Anyone with eyes could tell this was a carefully staged performance, but Margarita seemed like a different person. In front of all the guests, she questioned me with a tone I barely recognized. "What are you waiting for? Apologize to Simon right now." I didn't touch him. He staged the whole thing himself. I forced myself to stay calm, speaking every word clearly. Margarita's eyes were icy, as if every word I said was a lie. "He can barely stand. How could he have fallen on purpose? I've already made it very clear. This wedding was just to fulfill his last wish. But you actually attacked a dying man out of jealousy. Duncan, I'm so disappointed in you. My future father-in-law, once always kind to me, now pointed his finger and shouted, I really misjudged you. You would hurt someone that sick. Do you have no conscience? And to think I used to see you as my future son-in-law, just thinking about it now terrifies me." As they took turns accusing me, I felt the last bit of warmth in my heart drain away. All those illusions of being one family shattered completely in that moment. The guests around us also turned on me, throwing scornful looks. "It's just about helping a terminally ill man fulfill a wish, why be so petty?" Exactly, no empathy at all. How is someone like him worthy of marrying the Sue family's daughter? Looking at their self-righteous expressions, I could only laugh inside. Of course, they were all Sue family's friends and relatives. Naturally, they'd take Margarita's side. Margarita Sue stared at me coldly. Duncan, this is your last chance. Apologize to Simon now, or I'll seriously reconsider our relationship. We can delay the wedding for now. In the past, whenever she used that tone, I would immediately lower my head and apologize. But this time, I felt like laughing, because she seemed to have forgotten. Just a week ago, when she left me behind to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau with Simon, she had already made her choice. Simon was now, in every legal sense, her husband. I said calmly, no need to delay it, just cancel it. With that, I took off the groom's boutonniere from my chest and let it fall to the ground, then walked out of the banquet hall without looking back. Margarita called after me, but I didn't stop. I thought letting go would hurt, but at that moment, I felt an odd sense of peace. From now on, Margarita would no longer be part of my life. As I walked out of the hotel, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Margarita. Sorry, I got too emotional just now. Please don't be mad. I sneered. Too late. The moment she chose to stand by Simon in front of everyone, we were over. Moments later, another message came. Once Simon passes, I'll give you an even grander wedding. I thought back to the night I proposed and how I'd stayed up all night in excitement, dreaming about our future. But now, looking at this message, my heart felt nothing. Margarita's future had nothing to do with me anymore. She could marry whoever she wanted. Taking a deep breath, I sent a message to my mentor in Shanghai. Senior, I'm ready to take over the US project. He replied quickly. Finally came around. I've been waiting to hear that. When can you come? Anytime. Perfect. The project team meets in 3 days. Come straight over. I agreed without hesitation. I had once given up the opportunity to work in the US for Margarita. Looking back now, it was incredibly foolish. My mentor scheduled a meeting the day after tomorrow to go over the details and to throw me a farewell dinner. After the call, I took a cab home to pack my things. But as I opened the door, I saw Simon lazily sprawled across my leather sofa, surrounded by imported snacks. My future father-in-law sat beside him, smiling as he peeled cherries. Here, Simon, try these. They're air-shipped from Chile. I frowned. Why is he here? His face instantly changed. This is Margarita's home now. She can invite whoever she wants. Hands on his hips, he acted like the rightful owner. And you, weren't you all high and mighty at the wedding? Now you come crawling back. If you won't apologize to Simon, don't even think about stepping through this door. Looking at the scene before me, I could only feel bitter irony. When his business failed, I took him into my home without hesitation. This villa was given to me by my family, and I had promised to transfer it to Margarita once we got married. But they seemed to forget. Margarita had already married Simon, and this house still belonged to me. Chapter 3. I walked straight into the house, ignoring their shouting. My father-in-law exploded in anger, slapping the coffee table. You've got some nerve. This is no longer a place you can come and go as you please. Just as he was about to blow up further, the scent of perfume wafted in from the doorway. Margarita stood in the entryway holding several high-end shopping bags, and upon seeing the tense scene, she sighed lightly. What are you arguing about this time? The bags, clearly marked with Hermes and Gucci logos, were all filled with men's items. No need to guess who they were for. Her father immediately put on a pitiful face. It's Duncan. Of course, he came back just to pick a fight, insisting Simon can't stay here. What happened to his compassion? Margarita set down the shopping bags, her tone brooking no argument. Simon grew up in an orphanage and now he's gravely ill. He finally feels what it's like to have a home. I won't let him face this alone. She spoke as if it were the most natural thing in the world, like I had no choice but to accept it. The old me might have argued with her until sunrise, but now I felt nothing but emptiness. As long as it makes you happy. My calm clearly caught her off guard. She froze for a second. You're not against it? What's there to oppose? I let out a soft laugh. Since this relationship was already over, it didn't matter who she lived with, except this villa soon wouldn't belong to them anymore. Back in the master bedroom, I started packing my luggage. The room was filled with memories. Photos of us under the Eiffel Tower, shells from the Maldives, the scarf she had knitted for me by hand. The most eye-catching item was a crystal music box on the desk, the one we bought in Vienna after a Mozart concert. Once, all of this had been priceless. Now, it was all just ironic. I swept everything into cardboard boxes. Margarita pushed the door open. When she saw me packing the music box, her expression changed dramatically. You're throwing that away too? That's from the Golden Hall. Let the past stay in the past. Without even lifting my head, I continued packing. She bit her lip, her tone softening. If you're upset about Simon, we can talk about it. I'll have him move somewhere else. All right. Since Simon showed up, all we'd done was argue. Every time, she had taken a hardline stance. But now, she was finally yielding. Unfortunately, It was far too late. My heart had already gone cold. After I finished packing, Margarita finally noticed the wound on my arm. Her face changed. "You're bleeding." The irony was, she only noticed now. "It's just a scratch," I replied flatly, ready to leave. She grabbed my hand. "Don't go. I'll get the first aid kit." For a moment, memories flashed before my eyes. The old Margarita used to dote on me in every way. At the slightest discomfort, she'd panic and lose sleep. But ever since Simon arrived, everything changed. "Help!" Simon's sudden wail came from the living room. Margarita immediately let go of my hand and rushed out without a backward glance. Chapter 4. When I opened the door, the first thing I saw was Simon resting his head on Margarita's lap in an overly intimate posture. "Margarita, I just wanted to make you a cup of coffee." He played the part of the fragile patient. Showing his untouched fingers, Margarita held his hand tenderly. "Don't move. I'll go get the medicine." Simon caught my gaze and a flash of smugness passed through his eyes. "Margarita treats me so well. Ku must be jealous, right?" Only then did Margarita remember I was still there. She scrambled to explain. "His immune system is weak. I need to tend to his wound first." I gave a cold laugh. "Don't bother." My father-in-law jumped in, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Someone like Duncan Ku, with skin as thick as a rhino, doesn't deserve anyone's concern. Besides," he pushed Simon. He had it coming. Hearing those words, I felt a chill deep in my bones. When his business went under, I gave up my shot on Wall Street to stay and help him. Now, in his eyes, I was just some parasite leeching off the Su family. Suddenly, Simon grabbed a fruit knife and threatened to harm himself. "Is it because Ku thinks my life isn't worth enough?" Margarita snatched the knife away and glared at me. "Will you only be satisfied if he dies?" I picked up my luggage and turned to leave. I never intended to stay anyway. "What's that supposed to mean?" Margarita grabbed my arm. "Break up," I said it calmly. Looking at their arrogant, self-righteous faces, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of irony. They still didn't realize that the ones about to be homeless were them. Chapter 5. The day I left, I made two decisions. First, I contacted a real estate agency and listed the luxury villa in the city center for sale. To my surprise, it took less than half a day for a buyer to inquire. "Hello, Mr. Ku, we're very interested in the property, but we heard someone's currently living there. Just follow the standard procedure. If they refuse to cooperate, call the police," I replied calmly. In the days that followed, I handled the property transfer while also giving myself a break. All these years, I'd been running all over the financial world to support my father-in-law's business. Yet I had never truly taken the time to see this city. I checked into a hotel near the financial district. During the day, I handed off my responsibilities at work. In the evenings, I strolled through neon-lit streets, rediscovering this city that felt both familiar and foreign. Meanwhile, Margarita kept sending messages. "Duncan, stop being so stubborn. Come home." "Okay." I ignored her. "There's a new Michelin-starred restaurant on the Bund. Want to check it out together?" At first, her tone was still gentle, like coaxing a sulking child. Gradually, her patience wore thin. "What do you want from me?" I already apologized. "Do you really need me to get down on my knees and beg?" "Duncan, can you stop being so immature?" She always thought I was the one in the wrong, that I was being unreasonable, and her so-called apologies were nothing more than perfunctory scraps tossed my way. Since that was the case, I might as well let go completely. 3 days later, the agent messaged me. "The paperwork is complete. The new owner wants immediate possession." According to the agent, when he brought the buyer over to view the property, my father-in-law was busy ordering the maid to pack Simon's luggage. When he learned the house had been sold, he fainted on the spot. After waking up, he grabbed his phone to call a lawyer, screaming that he would sue me for illegally stealing his property. It wasn't until the police presented all the legal documents that he finally snapped out of it. In the end, under the officer's instruction, they had no choice but to pack up and leave. Hearing this, I felt nothing. I simply replied, "Got it. Thanks for letting me know." I was about to head overseas. Their future had nothing to do with me anymore. Before I left, my former colleagues at the investment bank held a farewell dinner for me. As the drinks flowed, everyone raised their glasses. "Mr. Ku, don't forget to look out for us when you make it to Wall Street." "Exactly. We're counting on you to lead us to riches." I laughed and shook my head. "Save that flattery." My boss patted my shoulder. "With your ability, it won't be long before you're in charge of your own team." Just as we were clinking glasses, the door to the private room suddenly swung open. Margarita and Simon stood at the entrance with my father-in-law. Margarita's eyes were red with tears. "Duncan, did you really sell the house?" She looked at me in disbelief, as if I were a stranger she didn't recognize. Her father, on the other hand, was livid. "How dare you, Duncan? Who gave you the right to sell my house?" Chapter 6. The atmosphere in the private room instantly froze. My colleagues looked at each other, clearly not expecting a scene like this. My boss frowned and turned to me. Duncan, what's going on? My father-in-law stepped forward with a dark expression. I'm his father-in-law. You must be Duncan's boss. Once the boss nodded, he immediately switched to a sorrowful, aggrieved face. You have to help us. This ungrateful bastard sold our house just because he had a fight with my daughter. Now the whole family's out on the street, and look at him, drinking and laughing like nothing happened. Simon chimed in at just the right moment. Mr. Koo, I know you hate me, but this is going too far. You can't take revenge on Margarita's whole family. That house belongs to the Su family. What you did is illegal. My father-in-law seized the moment to report me to my boss. You see what kind of person he is. Vicious, petty, and vengeful. It's better to fire someone like him now before he brings real trouble to your company. My boss looked back at me, frowning deeply. Duncan, explain. I let out a cold laugh. Simple. I'm heading to the U.S., so I sold my house. Is there a problem with that? Bullshit. My father-in-law jumped like a cat with its tail stepped on. That house clearly belongs to the Su family. You're a fraud. I'm calling the police right now. As he pulled out his phone, he began shouting at the top of his lungs. Where's the justice? We treated you well, and this is how you repay us. You throw us out on the street, don't you feel a shred of guilt? His scene drew a crowd from the restaurant hallway. People began pointing and whispering. What a heartless guy, kicking his father-in-law out of the house. People these days, no morals at all. Seeing everyone siding with him only encouraged my father-in-law further. Duncan, I demand you return that house to us, or I'll make sure you're blacklisted from the entire financial industry. I calmly pulled the property deed from my briefcase. You say this house belongs to the Su family, do you have any proof? He puffed up with righteous indignation. You said it yourself. You promised to transfer the house to Margarita after registering your marriage. Margarita's face turned ghostly pale. Her father, still oblivious, urged her on. Margarita, bring out the deed. She stammered. Dad, about that. I flipped to the key page of the deed. No need to look. The deed's right here. See for yourself, whose name is on it. People leaned in to look, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. So the house was his all along. Didn't the old man just say it was theirs? My father-in-law's face darkened to a frightening shade. No way. You said you were going to give it to Margarita. I smirked. Yes, but only after we got married. Why don't you ask your precious daughter, did she ever marry me? Chapter 7. It was like lightning had struck my father-in-law. He stumbled back 2 steps, glaring at Margarita. You didn't marry Duncan. Margarita kept her head down, silent. Simon quickly stepped up to support the staggering man. Dad, Margarita finally spoke. That day Simon said he didn't have long to live. His last wish was to marry me. I gave in and went to the Civil Affairs Bureau with him. Then we got caught up in planning the wedding. I just didn't get a chance to tell you. My father-in-law's face turned white as a sheet. Absurd. Absolutely ridiculous. Only now did I realize, he had assumed I was already legally married to Margarita and that Simon's role was just for show. He thought I was firmly tied down, so he dared to treat me with such arrogance. He never expected that his own daughter would deal him the biggest blow. Everyone in the private room had now pieced the story together. Some were amused. Others cast me sympathetic looks. My father-in-law made a complete 180, forcing a smile. Oh, so that's what happened. Silly me. What a big misunderstanding. He walked toward me enthusiastically. Duncan, it's all my fault. You're the bigger person here. Don't hold this against me. I stepped back with a cold smile. I knew full well, he wasn't remorseful. He was just scared of losing that multi-million-dollar villa. If I really had transferred the house to Margarita, he would have been singing a completely different tune. He tried to approach again, but I avoided him, unbothered. He kept smiling. Duncan, come on, young people argue. That's normal. Let's forgive Margarita this one time. We're family, aren't we? No need to blow things up like this. I pulled out my household registration booklet and flipped to my personal info. Mr. Su, please take a good look. My marital status is unmarried. We are not family. He was completely speechless, but didn't dare explode. Without that house, they couldn't even afford to stay in the city center. He turned around and glared viciously at Margarita. What are you waiting for? Apologize to Duncan. Margarita bit her lip, hesitating. Seeing this, Simon tried to repeat his old trick. Uncle, it's all my fault. I'll leave right away, so Mr. Koo and Margarita can get back together. But the man who had just treated him like a son now sneered coldly. So you do know it's your fault? If it weren't for you insisting on a wedding, would our family be in this mess? Get out. Get out of my sight right now. Chapter 8. Simon's face turned pale instantly. He hadn't expected my father-in-law to say something like that. Having lost his parents at a young age and plagued by poor health, he had always relied on Margarita's financial support. If he left her, he wouldn't even have a place to sleep tonight. Faced with a man whose loyalty flipped faster than a page in a book, Simon could only lower his head in silence. I watched the whole circus coldly and waved my hand, growing impatient. The show's over. Please leave and stop disturbing our dinner. A flash of displeasure crossed Margarita's eyes. Duncan, even if things are strained between us, you shouldn't speak to my father that way. I gave a mocking smile. And who are you to lecture me, miss? Margarita froze. Back then, I used to yield to her on everything. I had never spoken to her in such a cold, detached tone. Now, the way I looked at her was as if she were a stranger. Her eyes filled with tears. Duncan, do you really have to be this ruthless? I couldn't be bothered to argue. I dialed the hotel's security department directly. If you don't leave now, I'll have no choice but to call the police. My tone was icy. Seeing that neither soft nor hard tactics worked, my father-in-law suddenly dropped to his knees, crying and sniffling. Duncan, please, don't do this to us. Where are we supposed to live without that house? Wherever. It's none of my concern. Now please leave. We're in the middle of a work discussion. I shut the private room door without emotion. Outside, I could hear him cursing, saying I had no respect for elders or humanity. Soon after, hotel security arrived and removed all three of them from the premises. I had given them a chance to leave with dignity. They chose not to take it. The room returned to peace, but the meal had already lost its taste. Chairman Wang gave me an awkward look. I didn't expect that kind of drama from your family. My other colleagues chimed in sympathetically. That old man's unbelievable. Lived all those years for nothing. Yeah, Mr. Koo gave them everything, and this is how they repay him. Don't take it to heart. Mr. Koo, you're about to start fresh in a new city anyway. A warmth rose in my chest. These colleagues, mere acquaintances, could show such basic empathy. Yet the men I nearly called family, and the woman I once loved, stabbed me again and again. I lifted my glass and downed it in one go. What's done is done. From now on, I'll leave it all behind and focus on my career. Chairman Wang patted my shoulder. That's the spirit. After several rounds of drinks, I was a bit tipsy and staggered out of the room, eager to return to the hotel and rest. Just as I stepped outside, Chairman Wang nudged my arm and motioned in a certain direction. I turned to look. Margarita was standing alone in the cold wind. It was late autumn, and the air carried a biting chill. Her thin clothes fluttered as she shivered. When she saw me, her furrowed brow softened. Duncan, can we talk? Her voice was gentle and cautious. I braced against the haze of alcohol. What is it? Maybe it was my coldness that struck a nerve. Her eyes reddened again. Duncan, do you really have to talk to me like that? Chapter 9. Once, in my eyes, Margarita was the brightest star in the sky, and I was willing to be the sword-bearing guardian who protected her light. I tiptoed around her every emotion, terrified she might feel even the slightest grievance. But now, Margarita could sense that the Duncan who once gave in to her unconditionally was slowly drifting away. That loss of control left her anxious and afraid, so afraid that she waited out in the cold night for an hour just to see me. Duncan, my dad's been in poor health lately. That's why he got so emotional. Please don't take it to heart. I listened to her words and found them utterly ridiculous. So because he's unwell, that gives him the right to trample on my dignity and hurl endless insults. If she was still making excuses for them, then this conversation no longer had any value. I turned to leave, but Margarita quickly stopped me. Duncan, I know you still resent me because of what happened with Simon. Give me a chance to explain. I paused. Since I was about to leave the city anyway, I figured it wouldn't hurt to lay everything out, save her the effort of chasing me down again. Fine. Margarita sighed in relief and immediately pulled out her phone to book a table. Just then, her phone rang. After a few short exchanges, her expression turned pale. Duncan, Simon's developed a high fever and has been hospitalized. I need to go see him right away. Can we talk another day? Before the words were fully out, she had already flagged down a taxi and left without looking back. I stood there, watching the taillights disappear into the night, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Ever since Simon fell ill, the moment anything happened to him, Margarita would drop everything and run to him, without hesitation. Maybe Margarita did love me, but in her life, I would never come first, and if that's the case, letting go is the best choice. The sky above was dark and heavy, as though rain was near. Cold wind, heavy with dampness, slapped against my face. I pulled my coat tighter around me and turned back toward the hotel. The next morning, I boarded a flight out of the city where I had spent nearly a decade of my life, leaving everything behind in the clouds below. I poured myself into work. With Chairman Wang's support, I quickly gained a foothold in the new branch office and closed several major deals. The company thrived, and I was soon promoted ahead of schedule to vice president. During this time, Margarita kept messaging me. First came photos of Simon lying in a hospital bed. He looked gaunt and barely human, cheekbones sharp, eyes sunken, his bald head only making him appear more fragile. I had always assumed he was faking his illness for sympathy, but it turned out he was genuinely on the brink of death. Margarita stayed by his side at the hospital every day. The doctor said he had, at most, 3 months left. She sent me an apology. Duncan, I was too selfish. I ignored your feelings. Please give me a chance to make it right. She also sent a video of her father. After losing the house, they had to move back to an urban village. The environment was terrible, and her father's leg condition relapsed. He was now confined to a wheelchair. In the video, her father was in tears. Duncan, it was all my fault. I shouldn't have treated you that way. Please come back and marry Margarita. Even Simon sent a message. I'm sorry. I've done too many awful things. My time is almost up. Please don't hold a grudge against a dying man. Margarita truly loves you. I read all these messages with a calm smile. Margarita and I were over. Whether they loved me or hated me, it no longer had anything to do with me. All I wanted was to focus on my own life. I thought I would never see Margarita again in this lifetime. Until one day, my assistant came to me, looking troubled. Mr. Koo, there's a woman downstairs who's been crying. She insists she must see you. I frowned and followed him down, only to find Margarita standing there, hugging a pile of gifts. The moment she saw me, her face lit up with a smile. She opened her arms to embrace me. Duncan, I've missed you so much. Chapter 10. I took a step back to avoid her hug. How did you find this place? Margarita didn't show the slightest hint of embarrassment. Instead, she gave me a sweet smile. I asked Chairman Wang to help me find your new company. I really missed you. I hadn't expected her to follow me all the way to this new city. It was lunch break, and many colleagues were walking through the lobby, casting curious glances. Is that Mr. Koo's girlfriend? Didn't expect Mr. Koo to have such a stunning girlfriend hidden away. But, looks like they might be arguing. The whispers reached my ears, and I frowned. Please don't come here again. This is affecting my work. I spoke coldly, but Margarita acted like she hadn't heard a thing, still smiling gently. I know you're still angry with me, so I want to prove myself through actions. I want you to accept me again. From that day on, Margarita launched into an obsessive pursuit. She sent carefully prepared lunch boxes every day, along with my favorite coffee and snacks. Each package adorned with handwritten sticky notes bearing warm messages. My colleagues all joked that I was lucky to have such a thoughtful ex-girlfriend. But instead of being moved, I felt nothing but irritation. Her actions had seriously disrupted my life. I instructed security to stop her at the entrance every time she came. All the food and gifts she sent, I threw them straight into the trash. Yet Margarita seemed possessed, continuing to deliver them day after day. She messaged me, if you don't see me for one day, I'll wait a day. If you don't see me for a lifetime, I'll wait a lifetime. With no other option, I finally agreed to meet her once. Margarita was overjoyed. I knew you wouldn't really ignore me. Tomorrow at noon, downstairs from your office. I'll be there. Don't stand me up. The next day at noon, I waited at the agreed location. From midday until the city lights flickered on, she never showed up. Just as I reached for my phone to ask, I saw a post on Instagram. In the photo, Margarita was holding Simon's urn, kneeling on the ground in tears. The caption read, "What's the point of living without you?" I calmly opened my settings and blocked her completely. Even with Simon gone, he still held the number one place in her heart. So be it. If we were fated to part, it was better to cut off everything. From now on, we would be nothing more than strangers brushing past each other in the sea of people. Margarita, goodbye, forever. I poured all my energy into work. Half a year flew by. The company was thriving, and I was promoted to head of the branch office, soon to head overseas to explore new markets. Before I left, Chairman Wang invited me out. You're heading abroad soon. Let's catch up before you go. How about it? I smiled and nodded. Sounds good. Returning to my old city, everything felt both familiar and foreign. On the way back from the airport, the car passed a rundown urban village. It was here, years ago, that I first met Margarita and her father. Through the haze of memory, I saw an elderly man slouched in a wheelchair in front of a crumbling house. He was frail, his eyes dull, completely devoid of his former presence. A woman beside him was preparing a simple lunch, thin porridge and a few plain dishes. The whole scene was bleak. Suddenly, the old man looked through the car window and spotted me. His trembling hand pointed in my direction, lips moving, as if trying to say something, but no sound came out. The woman scolded him softly and pushed the wheelchair back inside. No one noticed that in the instant she turned around, a single clear tear slipped from the corner of her eye and disappeared into the dust.